Hello and welcome back to Pratfall.
Today, we wanted to step back and have a little recap of the roadmap we received back in March of this year.
Now, we've been absolutely spoiled with content since Enshrouded entered early access, but we thought it'd be fun to take a little look at all the new things we've seen added to the game, as well as the things that are yet to come.
So without further ado, let's take a look.
So the first major update that we had, of course, was the beautiful Hollow Halls dungeons. That came out. We've got that in the bag. That was the first one, wasn't it, Ben?
Yeah, so it's the first thing on the roadmap, and probably the biggest thing that we've had so far as a whole. In terms of like one item on the roadmap, the Hollow Halls dungeons is probably the biggest one. Like we got 4 massive, unique dungeons. They're all very fun, they're all very frustrating, depending on who you are and how good you are at the game.
Yeah, I think that was definitely the big thing they wanted to sort of start with a bang with the updates, and they definitely did. So next up we have Steam Deck support. Now I believe that's been added. Neither of us obviously have a Steam Deck, so we haven't tried that, but I believe it's been added to the game now. Next up we have performance improvements. We definitely got some of these in the Hollow Halls update. That's right, isn't it?
We did, yeah. It's kind of a broad thing though, isn't it? There's no like specifics on the roadmap, but that was one of the things that was mentioned in like the trailer for the Hollow Halls.
Yeah, but that's obviously one of those points that we'll see, you know, performance improvements with every update as we go forward anyway.
Yeah, and that, I mean, after that we have smoother high FPS gameplay, which is kind of along the same lines. Again, that came with the Hollow Halls, I believe.
Yeah, there's a fair few of those points in the roadmap where they may have been highlighted in specific updates, but there are certain things that will be progressively improved. Now, location improvements. This is another one of those. So I believe in every single update that they've released, they've modified some areas of the map to some extent.
Yeah, the weird thing about this is I know they've put in work, sort of reworking these locations, but I couldn't tell you a single one that they've reworked. I know you have a base on one of your worlds right next to
Fort Kelvin.
the location. Fort Kelvin, that was it. Right next to that. So obviously you loaded into the game after the update and was like, what is this?
Yes.
For me personally, like you say, I'm pretty sure they've done it with every update. I couldn't tell you anything other than that, and I'm kind of ashamed of myself, if I'm being honest, because I mean, they've put a lot of work in.
Yeah, to be fair though, I feel like it's one of those things where unless they have changed a part of the map that you have come past a lot, that you've been in a lot, it's one of those things that you're not necessarily going to notice. But you know, they're welcome improvements regardless. I know they've changed a few cities, and I know, like with Fort Kelvin, for example, they modified the city, modified some of the block choices, as well as modifying some of the terrain around it. So I imagine they will continue to do that gradually as they expand the map further. So improved loot UI. This was one thing that they got on very, very quickly. I believe, I can't really remember how it used to work. Was it almost like a chest?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? We've been so spoiled.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to remember. I think it used to work similarly to a chest where you'd open their inventory, whereas now it's like a little overlay that appears in the middle of the screen showing what loot is on the dead enemy.
That sounds about right. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? These quality of life things that come just periodically over the months, you do tend to forget what it was like before.
Yeah, you get so used to them very quickly. So next we have another welcome addition that's been in the game for a while, which is workshops crafting from magic chests. So that just made things a lot easier for us when we are, you know, smelting things to be able to just grab things straight out of the magic chests into these crafting placeables.
Yeah, it was absolutely needed, and it came very early on, which was nice. Came with the Hollow Halls. I think, you know, most people, if they were looking at like small changes they could quickly implement that would massively impact the game, that would be one of them.
Yeah, and again, it's another one of those things where I can't really remember us not being able to do that at this point. Similarly as well, we have better stack splitting. So this was one thing that was genuinely a little bit infuriating early on, wasn't it, Ben?
It was a bit frustrating. What was it? You could either split it in half or you could take one.
Yes, I think that's right.
Again, we take it for granted now because the system now is fantastic. Can't fault it.
Now we come to our first point, Ben, that we don't have yet, and that is multiple NPC instances. So this would just work by, instead of just having one sort of placeable NPC per NPC, if that makes sense, you'd be able to have, you know, a carpenter in one base and a carpenter in another base. So they haven't implemented that just yet, but I imagine that can't be too far off.
Yeah, I think that will come in a huge update, possibly the next update, along with several other things that we'll touch on later on in the roadmap.
Yeah, I will just touch on that as well. As I've played the game more and more over the last sort of 6-7 months, whatever it's been, I can't say that, you know, not being able to have multiple NPC instances has caused me any issues. I mean, it'll be nice to be able to have that, but I definitely don't think, you know, not being able to do that has been a problem for me.
As you say, we've been playing the game for half a year or more now, and I think you just become accustomed to that after a while. It's just the way the game is, and you know that if you need to access certain things, you need to go back here on the map. Like, that's the base that has all the stuff.
Yeah.
You just kind of get used to it, and it is fine. It's not an issue by any means, but I do think it will be much more convenient once it is implemented.
Yeah, I think it'll end up being more like you've got multiple bases instead of having a base and then different builds smattered around.
Yeah, I mean, for me, sometimes it does make me somewhat reluctant to work on new settlements because I know how empty it's going to feel because no one's going to be there. And I'm always just going to end up going back to my original base anyway.
So next up, we have a reassignable glider shortcut. So this still hasn't been added yet. Now, I'm not entirely, you know, when we first went through the roadmap, I wasn't entirely sure what this means. What I assume it means is you'd be able to quick change between different gliders, right? So me and you have this issue a lot of the time, as I'm sure many people do, where 9 times out of 10, in fact, almost all the time, I have the Ghost Glider equipped. The Ghost Glider isn't always necessarily what you want because it is very quick. So I assume it means you'll be able to switch between 2 or more gliders depending on what you're doing, where you're gliding from, where you're gliding to.
Yeah, like in the Hollow Halls, for example, if there were a bunch of kind of platforms placed around that you needed to glide to, the Ghost Glider, it was too much and you would end up just launching yourself off. So yeah, like a more basic glider. I think Keen themselves even recommended, like in the Discord or on socials or something, using like a low-level glider for stuff like that.
Oh,
so
sure.
I'm pretty sure it came up at some point. And yeah, I think everyone's kind of in the same boat there.
So sitting on furniture, on paper that's a relatively simple thing, but you do end up doing it a lot, don't you?
You do. It's another one where I can barely picture what it was like to be able to craft benches and things and not be able to actually sit in them.
Yeah.
It's sort of akin to when the game launched, if we had beds but couldn't sleep.
Yes, sure. I see what you're saying.
I wish there were more idle animations for your characters. They do all, it's kind of weird. If you have like a couple of benches laid out, I've noticed this with our community streams, Sean. When you have a bunch of people kind of lined up on the benches, it all just looks quite...
it's awkward, isn't it? Because everyone's sat in the exact same position.
It just looks a little bit awkward. I wish there were more kind of idle animations. I don't know, like kicking the feet or something.
Yeah, or like leaning back. Yeah, or even just like looking around and stuff.
Yeah, it's a minor complaint. It's not even really a complaint, but if they wanted to do something like that in the future, that would be cool.
So next up we have improved post-processing. I'm not going to lie to you, Ben. I still don't really know what this means. I know it's been added, and I assume it will continue to be improved as time goes on, but I don't know what it means, dude. I just don't.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they got it out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I believe it was Hollow Halls, wasn't it?
I can't help you there, mate.
Yeah.
I don't know either. We're not very tech savvy.
No, we're not.
Understand all this shit. So, like, I would put that with performance improvements and stuff. It's all the same kind of thing, surely.
Exactly. Yeah, I would agree.
If anyone watching knows what it means, please put it in the comments.
Please, I'd love to know what it means.
We need to know these things, Sean. With content creators, I feel like it'd be beneficial.
Yes. Next up, we have more trees to grow. So again, I think this is another one that will just sort of snowball as time goes on, and we'll get more and more plants and trees. But for the most part, I believe we had a big chunk of new trees to grow when the Hollow Halls update came out.
I think so, yeah. I think they added was it the ones that give you resin?
Yes, I remember, yeah.
Which is cool. I hope we get more kinds of trees in the future.
So round doors and windows, this is one of those things that people were really, really excited for, because when the game first entered early access, everyone and their nan was building Hobbit halls. Hobbit halls? That's a mix of Hobbit.
Hobbit halls.
Oh my, mate.
Crikey.
The new version of the Hollow Halls, Hobbit halls.
Hey man, we'll get to it in a bit, but they've mentioned instance dungeons. Maybe it's not just the Hollow Halls. You know what I mean? I'd be down for that.
I would be down for that as well.
You have to crawl through the whole thing. Sorry, continue.
But yes, so round doors and windows, that's something that they got on very, very quickly because everyone wanted it. I still haven't really used them. I think I've used some of the door frames.
I don't know if that was something they'd planned originally, because I imagine most items on the roadmap are things they've been thinking about before they even started an early access.
Yeah.
But I like to think that wasn't something they'd considered initially, but then when they saw, because they had like a beta too, right?
Yes.
When they saw people terraforming and digging kind of underground and like just into the earth and making these hobbit holes, they were like, I know what we could give them that would make these even cooler.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. Another aesthetic addition that they added in the Hollow Halls chapter was potted plants. So again, just another beautiful little thing just to spruce up and decorate your bases.
Yeah, the trees and the plants work well for the hobbit holes and the villages and stuff like that. Hobbits love plants, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So new building materials. Again, this is one of those that, will be added more and more as time goes on. New blocks and such. We've had loads and loads of new blocks and building materials and, furniture and stuff added since the start of early access. And, that will only grow and grow and grow as time goes on.
Yeah, we've generally had a good few with each update. I think with the Back to the Shroud update, though, which was the most recent one, I think we only had one new block.
I think that's correct as well.
Don't ask me what it was.
Mixed sandstone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially given how much of a focus there is on building in the game, I would have thought we maybe would have gotten 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We do have a bunch to work with.
I suppose with that update being more gameplay focused in terms of customizing your world to suit you.
Yeah, we've mentioned this before. It's definitely less aesthetic than the Hollow Halls or Melodies of the Mire.
Replayable world quests. So that got added, I believe, in Melodies of the Mire. Is that right?
I believe so, yeah.
So again, a welcome thing just to add a bit of replayability to the game. A bit of an issue people had, certainly people like us who have been really into the game since the launch of early access. You did run out of certain things to do, so them adding this system whereby you can replay certain quests, be that for XP or for loot or just for the joy of it, that was definitely a welcome addition. And then sort of relating to this as well, we have better quest sorting. So they added, I believe, with the replayable world quests, folders. We now have folders of the quests. I think that
we do, yeah, that's right. I forgot about what that meant, to be fair, but we do have folders, yeah.
Yeah, so there's, and that splits up your replayable world quests to the main quests, etc., etc. So it's just a bit more organized now, which is always nice. Flashing forward to the most recent update, we have server gameplay settings. So that was the Return to the Shroud update, Back to the Shroud update, that just added all these modifiers that allow us to cater our gameplay style to how we want to play.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the only item on this entire roadmap that came with the Back to the Shroud update.
Yeah,
which seems very strange because we've made a rough note of what came with what, and a bunch of these things came with Hollow Halls, a bunch of them came with Melodies of the Mire, but as we mentioned, Back to the Shroud really was about the gameplay settings, and that's a huge we mentioned the Hollow Halls and how that's probably the biggest single item on the roadmap, but the server gameplay settings is huge and will be, I think, for the longevity of the game.
Yeah, it's a much less flashy update as we've discussed before, but it's a much more complex thing to implement, I'd imagine, from a development perspective, and sort of lays the groundwork, again, as we've said before, for the game as a whole going forward. Server user rights. So I thought this had come with the most recent Back to the Shroud update, but in actual fact it was Melodies of the Mire, and this just added the ability to allow people into your world, but with certain restrictions on what they can and can't do. This was to sort of combat griefing and stuff like that, which was a welcome thing. We certainly use it for some of our community stuff. If we're holding a community event like one of our mini games or something, there's no need to allow people to build or anything like that. All they need to do is be in the world. So in that case, we'd just use the basic helper role. Townsfolk NPCs. So we obviously don't have that yet. A lot of people have been talking about how is that going to work? Are they going to, have a certain path that they can take? How are they going to wander around your base? Are they going to wander around your base? Certainly one of the most intriguing things that we haven't received yet.
Yeah, by far for me, the most intriguing, probably even more so than water, man.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because we know that if they manage to add water, which they've said they're gonna, you can kind of imagine how it's gonna work. But with the Townsfolk NPCs, it could mean a bunch of things. Now, not too long ago, we played Soul Mask, and that is the only thing I could sort of imagine it being like. These Townsfolk NPCs in your base that kind of work for you, essentially, and you can assign them tasks. And in that game, for example, and there's a bunch of games that are similar to it, they managed to sort of implement it in a way to where there's no like major collision issues or anything like that, and they kind of just you don't assign them a path, but they find their own path essentially and manage to do the task that they've been assigned. So they have to have a purpose, surely.
Yeah, they absolutely need a purpose. Otherwise, you could argue that the purpose would be just to make your town look more lived in, but I think they need some like visceral, mechanical purpose in the game. I agree.
I'd be intrigued to know how many players actually use, like resource worlds and stuff like that. Because I feel like they're becoming more and more common. And if so, you wouldn't really need townsfolk, surely.
Yeah.
I think they would just be aesthetic, essentially, to breathe life into your town. But you wouldn't necessarily need them. It wouldn't make your life easier to have them sort of doing these jobs for you, like chopping wood and mining for whatever. Because you can just pop over to a different resource world and grab the things that you need. Yeah.
Do you think it's possible that Keen Games are going to implement townsfolk in an attempt to combat the widespread use of resource worlds, to try and provide that a similar sort of thing, but within the world itself, in a context that makes sense within the world?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I've used them from time to time, but honestly, I would rather not. I only really try to use them when, say, we have a specific project that we're working on or a build or something, and we want to get it done as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
It saves a lot of time, but if they implement them in a way that it is more efficient for them to do these things, then I would rather have that as an option than
just going
to these resource worlds all the time.
Yeah. Next up, we have something that, again, I think will be built on as time goes on, and that's the Vanity system. Just a way to customize your appearance while also ensuring you have the armor stats that you want that best suit your character as well.
Yeah, it's a good system. I'm surprised they haven't added more armor sets at this point, because we've had 3 major updates. I can't, other than the cosmetic pieces, I couldn't even tell you any new armor sets that have been added, apart from the Hollow Halls armor from this last update.
Yes, yeah.
But in the Hollow Halls update and in the Melodies of the Mire update, I can't think of any.
No, there's been none that I've been particularly aware of. You would have almost expected maybe like a Vukar inspired, animalistic armor set with Melodies of the Mire.
Like bone armor or something like that.
Yeah, but who knows? Maybe they're pushing this back, trying to get a lot of the other sort of more major stuff sorted, and then as time goes on, they'll start looking at more armor sets and weapons and stuff like that.
We are starting to see more variation in that. Again, with our community streams, we have a lot of people join, and I think early on everyone kind of looked the same because everyone just had the best armor on.
Yeah.
But now, some people still just do that, but then some people have like a favorite armor set and they'll have that on as their like cosmetic pieces. So that's good to see.
Next up, we have another thing that hasn't been added yet, which will be very, very welcome, and that's editable signs, Ben. Editable signs.
The big one, isn't it?
Yes. Now, this one always intrigued me because the image is of a chest. So I hope that when this does come, it's not just the ability to change the name of a chest. I hope we do have like physical signs that we can customize and have in front of, storefronts or people's homes and stuff, as well as editable books to be able to tell stories within the world. I think that would be a welcome addition as well.
I don't know how useful people would find that across the board. I don't know how much people would utilize it, but certainly for content creators, I mean, we have a bunch of ideas that we can't really do until we have the editable signs. They could have just used that image as a placeholder because they weren't actually in the game yet.
Yeah.
You can't say editable signs and then just allow you to change the name of a chest.
Yeah. You think if it was just changing the name of a chest, it would say nameable chests.
But at the same time, I'd welcome that as well. Naming chests, I think that'd be quite useful.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I feel like most games in this genre do have some kind of version of that. But yeah, books, man. Books would be sick.
Yeah, it would just, I think it would lend itself to how Enshrouded presents itself so beautifully in terms of telling your own stories as a community and building up your own world and stuff. I think it would be a huge thing for the people that are really, really into the game.
They added the, what's it called, like the crypt bookrest or something from the Hollow Halls?
They did.
I saw that, man, and I was so excited.
Yeah.
Because I thought that looks like we can edit that, we can write in it or something. And we can't, but hey, if they add this, then hopefully they allow you to like write in those books specifically. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, perhaps that was them laying the groundwork for it. Fingers crossed, anyway. Musical instruments now in our community streams. Again, people love the musical instruments. This was added in the Melodies of the Mire update. Fantastic addition. Again, just allows the world to feel more lived in, just a bit of fun. It has a mechanical use in that it allows you to increase your rested buff as well. Just a nice fun little thing, isn't it?
Something we have mentioned is it would be nice to have the option to play the instruments both standing up and sitting on furniture, because at the moment I think we can only play them when we're sat on the floor, which feels a little bit strange. That'd be quite nice, but maybe in the future. Even
being able to walk around your city with the lute in hand, just playing as you wander around.
The like wandering bard.
Exactly, yeah. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, I'd love that. Just walking into the tavern.
Yeah. So, Townsfolk pets. I won't lie to you, Ben. I kind of forgot this was on the roadmap. I've not really given it much thought.
Really?
Yeah. But yeah, now that I've seen it again, that is an incredibly exciting thing to have. Again, just breathing so much life. Having cats or dogs wandering around, that would be really, really interesting.
Cats and dogs. Okay, interesting. I don't know if they would add more. You'd imagine they would add more, but I don't know if it just refers to like the creatures that are already in the game. I mean, I guess we can kind of touch on these two at the same time: Townsfolk pets and animal farming, because neither have come yet.
Yeah.
And you would imagine they're going to come together.
Yes, you'd expect so.
Yeah, I mean, you can see like goats, you can see the little weird rabbit things with the massive ears.
Yeah.
So there are like non-hostile creatures in the game that you could potentially sort of tame and then breed. I'd love a cat.
It'd be good, wouldn't it?
It's just a fun thing. It's probably not for everyone, but I like little details like that.
Yeah, and I suppose it's very different to everything else that we can do in the game currently. So it would definitely spread the general fun that you can have in the game even further than it already is.
That's it, man. I mean, with the townsfolk and pets and farming and things, you could turn Enshrouded into a cozy game. Yes, absolutely. If that's what people wanted, we have the difficulty settings now. You could pop it on casual or relaxed, whatever it's called. You could even turn off mob hostility if you want to, and just have it a farming town simulator.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Yep.
Mix in some of these things that we're yet to get with, like you say, some of the server gameplay settings. All of a sudden, the way you play the game can be drastically different. I think by the new year, you can have like both extremes in terms of gameplay experiences. Yeah, you could have a really hardcore experience, and on the other hand, like you've just said, you could have this really chill, cozy, no threats whatsoever, just there to live your life, live off of the land, and have a good time. So next up, Ben, we have enemy patrols. That's exciting, isn't it? Yeah, the closest thing I could think of would be the most recent Zelda games. Okay. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. So you kind of get that in those games, and it's quite fun. I don't know if they had, I assume they had like a pattern that they would kind of follow, but I think it was somewhat RNG based. Right, okay. You just sort of look around the corner and there's a mob of angry boglins walking towards you, and you're like, shit. And it keeps you on your toes. It adds like variation to the world. Obviously, Enshrouded isn't a procedurally generated world like a lot of survival games are, so it'd be nice to have something, or like some things in the game like that, which are sort of randomized. Yeah, little random encounters that just add a bit of unpredictability. I think as well, adding things like this that take away some of the safety from the game, especially for late game players, is always good. Yeah. All of a sudden, you've been playing for 6 months, you're max level, nothing in the game can really harm you anymore, and then all of a sudden you have the potentiality of, level 25 fell enemies just marching along this road that you're going down. I think that would add a really interesting element to the game. So next up we have weather system. I have a feeling that will be coming soon. Just to sort of also skip to the next one. I think the weather system and the mountains biome will be coming together. It would make sense, as again, Ben, you and I have discussed. You'd probably want a weather system ready for when you go up to the mountains so that you can have it snowing when you're up there. And again, like I think it'll be a subtle difference, but having it just rain while you're playing the game, I think all of a sudden it just adds this whole new perspective and sort of color palette and lens to what the game looks like.
Yeah, imagine if your crops grow faster after it's rained or something.
Yeah, that's clever. That's a cool idea, actually.
Do you think, in terms of the weather systems, do you think snow and rain will be like the two? Do you think we'll get like fog or anything like that?
I mean, if you're implementing a weather system, I feel like it's worth doing everything. I feel like you want rain, you want snow, you want fog, and you want thunderstorms.
Oh, yeah.
And again, like between all of those, think about, like I say, the color palette of each of those and how different, like the same area of the map would look, depending on which, weather system is being used at that moment.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you could imagine like a lot of rain in the Black Mire, for example.
Yes.
That would add visually, I feel like that would add a lot to that.
Yeah, and in terms of the sound design as well, like hearing the rain hit the mud and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And like thick fog in the Revelwood or something.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
So just to sort of hone in a bit more on the mountains biome. So recently Keen teased their first little look. It was just a little, not even a screenshot, was it? It was a photograph of a projector where they're playing in the mountains biome. So we expect that's probably coming next and maybe coming soon. Considering they've started to tease it a little bit. It's tough to say exactly what that will entail. Ben, are you in agreement with me that you think the mountains biome will come with the Sky Islands and that it'll be one big update together?
I think it makes sense. We put out a whole video on that talking about the Sky Islands and how it could all work. Proximity-wise, they do seem to be too close together for it to not be the same biome. But then again, we have the Black Mire, right, which is kind of like a sub-biome attached to the Revelwood.
Yes.
So I guess it is possible that the Sky Islands could be treated the same as like a sub-biome above the mountains.
Sure.
But in terms of when they come, I do think they come together, yeah.
But that's exciting though, because that means, let's assume for argument's sake that we're correct in this assumption. That means in one update and potentially the next update, we will be getting mountains, we'll be getting Sky Islands and a weather system all together.
Oh yeah.
Like that would be massive.
Yeah, that would be huge. I don't know, man. I'm up until now, in terms of the updates that we've had, I don't think we've really had a solid prediction about what was going to come next,
Yeah.
Certainly with the first one, they dropped the hollow halls. Like we saw the roadmap, but there were so many items on there that it was a case of they could literally add any of these at any point.
Yeah.
Whereas with now, because we have so many things marked off,
it's a bit easier.
It's a bit easier. We're looking at the individual things and sort of trying to make sense of it and being like, okay, these are probably coming soon.
Yeah. Especially if they are on track to reach full release around the time of the 1 year mark after early access. There's still a lot of stuff for them to add, and a lot of this stuff is quite large scale stuff, and we're coming towards the tail end of this year now. So a lot of these big implementations have to come relatively soon. Yeah,
it's only a few months away.
Portals to other servers, I'm not quite sure what this means. I assume this would, and this is what I hope it means, that, for example, you and I would be able to effectively link our worlds together so that we could place a portal in my world and your world, somehow link them up so that we could seamlessly travel between your world and my world and our joint world without any issue, if that makes sense.
That would be insane, wouldn't it?
It would certainly encourage this community vibe that Enshrouded naturally has. So next up we have nameable bases, and also just beyond that, nameable map locations. So we do have nameable bases. Do we have nameable map locations? I know they sort of improved the markers, but you can't name them yet, can you?
The image is basically what we can do with it now in terms of markers, and I think they added more markers in the last update or the update before that.
Yeah.
Because originally we noticed that it was very bare bones and the icons were kind of nonsensical. So they've since added more colors and more icons, but yeah, in terms of naming them, I don't know. I don't even know if it necessarily does refer to giving them a name or if it just meant the markers, but it'd be a weird way to phrase it.
Yeah, it's maybe they meant customizable map locations. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't use markers that much myself anyway. So if they want to make them nameable, I'd probably use them more in terms of marking certain ore locations and stuff, just to make things a little bit simpler. But again, it's one of those things that I haven't felt a huge need for regardless.
No, I don't think it's that needed. I think the icons we have are decent. They could potentially even add a few more at some point, just to make it like very easy to distinguish between markers.
Yeah, exactly. Now, multiplayer pings. This is one that is just one of those things that, you know, most games have now, certainly multiplayer games with an open world. Very useful, again, especially in our community streams, if someone's going to a specific location, pinging that so everyone knows where we all need to go. Just a nice quality of life improvement. Named tombstones. Again, I believe that was quite an early thing.
It was... I want to say it was Melodies of the Maya. Could have been Hollow Halls, but yeah, we've had it for a while.
Yeah. Again, just one of those quality of life improvements. I think it was just them finishing a feature that they hadn't quite finished yet. Because obviously it makes sense to have named tombstones anyway. I think it was them just polishing off that system. And
despite the fact that we do now have that, half of the time we don't even look.
Yep.
We just sort of grab the first tombstone you find.
Yeah, we're not great at that, are we?
Don't be like us, guys.
New enemies and bosses. So we have obviously seen new bosses in terms of, we obviously had the Cyclops in the Hollow Halls. Have we had any new general enemies?
Yeah, we've had quite a few. There's a few in the Hollow Halls, obviously.
Yeah, there's obviously the Hollow Halls ones. Did you know the Vukar equivalent of Greenman, of the green scythe guy?
Yeah.
Was he new in Melodies of the Maya?
He was, I believe.
Okay, yeah I thought so.
I think also, I feel like there's another one. Maybe, I don't know if Spearman was new, but there's one that has like a bowler that it throws at you, and I don't think that was a thing before.
Yeah, sure. So they've fleshed out the Vuka tribe enemies in Melodies of the Maya. And
we have the big swamp crocs.
Of course, yes, the snapjaws, yeah.
Yeah, the wasps.
Oh, mate, yeah, do you know what? There's loads.
There's a bunch of the little weird purple wisp things, which I still want some kind of lore for, mate. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Sure, it bothers me.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the little wisps.
I don't know, but yeah, we've had quite a few new enemies.
Fixes and polishing, again, sort of like we touched on earlier. This is just one of those things that they will just continue to improve as they release more and more updates. Even past full launch, they'll obviously do more and more of these little tweaks and polishes to make the game as good as it can possibly be. So now we move to the bottom side of the roadmap. Now, we were intrigued when the roadmap first released, weren't we, Ben, as to why some of these things were separated?
Yeah, almost like these are bigger projects that will take longer for them to implement.
So I have a working theory. I've come up with this today, so I want to know what you think about this. I think these things... The only thing that doesn't align with this is instance dungeons, but I think that says to me that we're going to get more different variety of instance dungeons as well as Hollow Halls. But I think all of these things at the bottom of the roadmap are things that they're aiming to implement in the 1.0 full release update. I think these are big scale things that they're going to wang in with us when we come to the full release.
Well, I don't know, man, because it says, here's a glimpse at some other major features coming later this year in our early access.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So I guess
I mean, that would make sense, but it says early access, so...
I guess it is just larger scale things that they're planning then.
Yeah, but this year though, man.
Yeah.
This year. We're at the time this goes live, we'll be in September. So that is not long. Oh, mate, I hadn't realised how close we are to Christmas. They have so much to bring out still.
Yeah.
Do you think they're panicked? Do you think they're ready?
I think they are, because they've been hitting the mark with every update. So I don't necessarily think all of these last things will be implemented before the end of the year, but I certainly think we will have a very, very few amount of these things that haven't been added come 2025.
Yeah, I don't know. Water, man. Water.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question, just before we touch on these real quick. If they don't manage to get all of this out later this year, do you think people would be mad?
I don't think so, no.
Because they have advertised it, technically, and it is a lot to advertise in the space of under a year.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think some people might be a little bit peeved off, but I think for the most part people will be understanding, especially considering, and we talk about this all the time, how on it Keen Games have been with these updates and how transparent they've been. I think for the most part the Enshrouded community as a whole will be like, hey, look, just take your time with it. If you need a bit more time, don't worry. You've been adding stuff for us near constantly, so if you want to take your time with certain things and make sure you get it right, we'll wait.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. And especially things like water, which we know are going to be very difficult to implement.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be mad if we don't get all of these things, but I still have confidence that they will get at least almost all of it out.
Yeah.
And if not everything later this year, at least before the game comes out of early access, I would imagine.
Exactly, yeah.
And to be fair, they've said water, they've not expanded on that. They've not said we get like lakes or rivers or anything. Maybe it's just like really small
ponds and stuff.
Ponds, yeah. Maybe you can just fill a bath.
Oh, then we could have a bath together. Maybe that's what they mean by water. Yes, I hope so.
That's all we need, brother.
So just to sort of touch on these last few points then, we've got sharing and visiting of bases. Again, this is another one that's sort of tough to understand exactly what they mean by this. My assumption is that it's the ability to share your world and someone else play it regardless of you having to be on the world, or like duplicate the world and send them the save file somehow or something like that. But yeah, I'm not too sure on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you can compare that to portals to other servers, but I think the way you've described both of them makes sense. How would that work? Would it be the same world that they would visit, or do you think it would be like a duplicate?
I think it would have to be a duplicate, because obviously otherwise you have the potentiality of people messing up your world.
But then I guess if you edit the permissions, they wouldn't be able to do that. They'd only be able to like access and view it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's tough to say how exactly it'll work, but it'll definitely be a valuable thing to have. And again, sort of like we said earlier, add to this sense of community and sharing worlds and being interested in what other people are doing in the game. When it comes to creating and sharing gameplay experiences, I think I now understand what they're getting at here, and I think it relates quite strongly, Ben, to something we've been doing recently. I think this is referring to the ability to create your own dungeons, potentially with mob spawning and stuff like that, as well as your own mini games, and the ability to share those maps for other people to play. Like, you create your own gameplay experience, whether that's a dungeon, whether that's a mini game, whether that's just your own sort of adventure map, and then the ability to share that with other people to play.
Your own dungeons?
Yeah, I mean, we can build dungeons now. The only thing that we'd need in that is some way to have enemy spawns or enemy spawn locations, so that you go through and there's actual things to fight in there.
That sounds incredible. I think it might be slight wishful thinking, especially if they're aiming to get this out like relatively soon.
Yeah,
I can't see a feature that big coming yet, but at the same time, I couldn't tell you what it means. I don't even have a theory on this one, so sure. I hope you're right, man. I hope you're right.
Again, I think it lends itself really well to all the mechanics that are in the game. And I think I've seen a few posts online of people having built their own dungeons and sort of being like, well, I'd love people to be able to come and like try my dungeon, but there's no way to have enemies spawning in there and stuff like that. So I think that's definitely something they will work on, in my opinion. Again, like you say, whether that comes soon or whether that comes, a long way off, it's probably more likely to come a long way off. But hey, if they want to implement that, then, I think a lot of people will be jumping at the opportunity to both create their own dungeons, share them, and play other people's.
And to be fair, mate, with them being in this section at the bottom with these 6, it could be quite a big feature, because it's in there with instance dungeons and biomes and water and like these massive features that have their own sort of category at the bottom of the roadmap.
Yeah.
So it could be a big thing. It could be something like that. So
world events. This is probably the thing that I think will add the most hype going forward. Because there's so much you could do with it. There's all these different factions you can use. Imagine them adding just this big statue or altar somewhere in the map that it wasn't before, and you can go there and activate this big world event where some sort of creature comes crashing down from the sky and you've got to kill this really difficult boss or something.
Yeah, well, they have the obelisks, don't they, in the world?
Yes.
And that's in the image there, so it would make sense for them to use those. Do you think that's where the portals to other servers would come in handy too?
Possibly, yeah. I think there'll certainly be like these landmarks that they use for things like that. And like you say, the obelisks definitely fit the bill for that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's either going to be manually activated events or just periodic whilst you're playing the game, or a mixture of both. I'd like to see some kind of mixture of both.
Yeah.
But if it was just like a periodic thing, and even like if there was like a timer or something on it, I don't know if there would be, but if something happened, let your friends know or whatever, and they could come through the portal and join you, help you out.
That would feel so cool. Like you're just waiting for this event, and like all your mates come through this portal with their armor fully geared up, and you're all there like, yes, we're ready.
It's like a Pokemon raid.
Yeah, sure. So instance dungeons, obviously we had the Hollow Halls as the first major update. The fact that this is here as well says to me, they've got plans for more instance dungeons. Again, maybe catering into the various different factions, maybe a Vukar one, etc., etc. So this is, that's always a good thing that we're going to have more of these.
A Vukar dungeon.
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess kind of similar to the big tree.
Exactly, yeah. But something instance that you could have on a grander scale with, different textures and stuff and different enemies.
Yeah, I mean, they at least need one or two dedicated to the Shroud enemies, the Fell.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we've got the Hollow Halls, but it is mostly... The game revolves around the Shroud at the end of the day. So some kind of big Shroud dungeons would be great.
The Deep Shroud, Ben.
The Deep Shroud. Okay.
Deep below the earth. Imagine you access it by a massive elevator that just takes you down into the underbelly of the world.
Yeah, man. You heard it here first, folks.
Also, more biomes. Obviously, that will be coming. We've not even scratched the surface of the total size of the map yet. So we're going to see all sorts of new biomes. Hey, Keen, if you want to implement a glowing glade biome, perhaps... I wouldn't hold that against you. It would be beautiful and blue and glowing.
Or maybe a purple variation.
Oh, purple and yellow.
There you go, Keen. You're welcome.
We need the Prat biome.
We need the Prat biome. We know you're watching. Stop pretending.
Oh, dear. And then finally, water. Again, it's tough to say exactly how this will manifest in the game. It's tough with a voxel-based system to have water because, if you mine out a little bit of dirt next to the water, it would be weird to not have that then flow into that gap. So, yeah, it's tough to see. It's tough to say how large scale they will treat that, but, it'll be a welcome addition however they implement it.
Yeah, so the other sort of big game that Keen have worked on was Portal Knights, which was quite similar to Minecraft.
Sure.
Similar kind of concept, voxel-based building system and stuff like that. And that was something, I don't think that game launched with water either, and they had to implement that sort of down the line. But yeah, so it's going to be a similar kind of hurdle for them, but I imagine a much more difficult hurdle within Enshrouded, as opposed to like a Minecraft-esque world, So we'll see what happens. I can't picture it. That's not my forte, Sean.
Yeah,
I haven't got a clue how you would add something like that to the game, but I've got all the faith in the world in Keen.
Yeah, I think they'll smash it, and I think it'll be like surprisingly impressive to see that in a world like Enshrouded, however they implement it.
Yeah, oh man, there would be so many build possibilities.
Yeah, you could do all sorts of stuff with it. So there we have it. So here's what we're left with in terms of things that are yet to be added to the game. We have multiple NPC instances. We have a resignable glider shortcut. We have townsfolk NPCs, editable signs, townsfolk pets, animal farming, enemy patrols, a weather system, a mountain biome, portals to other servers, nameable map locations, sharing and visiting of bases, creating and sharing gameplay experiences, world events, and finally water. So there's still a lot, there's still a lot to be added. So, we've obviously seen, you and I, Ben, how much they've added over the last sort of 6 or 7 months. And I think we assumed there wasn't that much left for them to implement.
Yeah.
I think they're about halfway through then-ish.
Roundabout, yeah. I would dare say the things they haven't yet implemented, on the whole, are bigger things than the things they have.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of big things for them to add.
Yeah, because, they put this roadmap out when they presumably had Hollow Halls ready to go.
Yeah.
In terms of all the other things like water and world events and mountains and things like that, I don't know how far into the process they were. But yeah, The clock's ticking, Keen. You don't have too much longer. Let's get cracking, as if they're not already putting so much effort into the game.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to smash it. I think we both know they're going to smash it.
I think we're in for an exciting few months here, Sean.
Well, again, like how I mentioned, me suggesting maybe they're about halfway through, we're also half a year past the release of this roadmap. So in terms of timing, they are about right. But as you said, the stuff that they have yet to add is not going to be easy to get working, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So I think we've mentioned this before, and I'm pretty sure Keen mentioned this somewhere, was that they aim to be out of early access around a year after they went into early access. So what, January, maybe February?
Yeah.
Which would, like you say, would give them about half a year to implement these things, if they do indeed aim to get everything out before they come out of early access. So it's quite a big task, but we have no idea how far they're into this process at this point.
Yeah. But it's exciting. Like one thing that I love, that I have loved over the last 6 months, is just seeing them implement this stuff and seeing the process of what they're prioritizing and how they're modifying the game in preparation for full release. It's been a genuine pleasure to sort of come along for the ride.
Yeah, it's great to support a game and support a team that clearly cares so much about their audience and care about the game and the growth of the game and things like that.
Yeah, it's a rarity in today's day and age. Well, this has been us recapping the Enshrouded Early Access roadmap for 2024. There's lots of stuff yet to come, and we reckon some big things are going to be coming very, very soon. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled. If you love all things Enshrouded, we have a Discord full of like-minded people that also love the game. People are always having discussions in there about the game and what's coming and what has come. So if you're interested in that, the link will be in the description. So hop in there, say hello to us, and we'll start having a lovely chat. But until next time, I've been Sean.
I've been Ben.
And you've been watching Pratfall.
Pratfall.